One day in the early 1970s, Nathan Knorr, president of the Watchtower, brought a case to the governing body for review. It involved a married couple from the state of California who were engaging in sexual practices considered unusual. The solution the Watchtower offered for that case had a profound impact on the lives of millions of married couples for more than 5 years. Join me as we take a closer look at this case that once again shows how the governing body toys with the lives of its followers. Ready? Before we get started, I want to make something clear. I deeply value my privacy. That's why the narrator's voice and image you're seeing were created with artificial intelligence. However, all the research, writing, and editing of this video were done by me, the creator. You can call me Nowachi. In this video, we're going to talk about a topic that Raymond Franz discussed in his book Crisis of Conscience. In it, he recounted a case that was brought before the governing body about a married couple who engaged in unusual sexual practices. I want to give a warning here. Although Raymond Franz addressed these cases in his book in a proper and professional manner, using terms like oral and anal sex, if you feel uncomfortable hearing about these subjects, this is the moment to leave the video. All right, Raymond tells us in his book that this case was presented to them without prior notice, which means no one knew about the matter except Nathan Knorr. So the members of the governing body had to discuss and decide on the issue without having done a diligent biblical investigation accompanied by prayer. As things stood, they discussed the matter for 2 hours and made a decision that deeply affected the lives of millions of married couples. The couple would be subject to removal. Afterward, they published guidelines on the matter in the Questions from Readers section of the December 1st, 1972 issue of the Watchtower, and all hell broke loose. Raymond Franz tells it this way. The published material was understood and applied in such a way that marriage mates generally felt obliged to report to the elders if any such practice existed or developed in their marriage, whether mutually agreed upon or done solely at the initiation of one of the mates. In the latter case, the non-initiating mate was expected to come forward and convey this information to the elders if the initiating mate was unwilling to do so. All of this led to many judicial hearings in which women felt deep embarrassment as they answered elders' questions about their marital intimacy. Now try to imagine the situation when one of the spouses wasn't a believer. Obviously, that situation ended in countless divorces. And that's how an unprecedented flood of correspondence began pouring into Brooklyn. A significant portion of that mail came from loyal Jehovah's Witnesses who saw no biblical basis for the governing body's directive. And without a doubt, they were right. The governing body would routinely cite Romans 1 verses 24 to 27 to support its stance. These verses say, "Therefore, God, in keeping with the desires of their hearts, gave them up to uncleanness, so that their bodies might be dishonored among them. They exchanged the truth of God for the lie and venerated and rendered sacred service to the creation rather than the Creator, who is praised forever." Amen. That is why God gave them over to disgraceful sexual passion, for their females changed the natural use of themselves into one contrary to nature. Likewise, also the males left the natural use of the female and became violently inflamed in their lust toward one another, males with males, working what is obscene and receiving in themselves the full penalty which was due for their error. And that's where the Watchtower took the term unnatural completely out of context. It's obvious that the passage is referring to lesbian and homosexual relations. However, they applied the term to oral and anal practices, even when these took place within the marital bed. The issue weighed so heavily on the conscience of some witnesses that they wrote to the society, no longer asking about the practices we've already mentioned, but even about whether sexual foreplay before intercourse within marriage was acceptable. No one seemed to have any idea anymore where the line between right and wrong was supposed to be. One woman wrote, "I believe it's a matter of conscience, but I am writing you to be sure." Her final words were, "I am scared, I am hurt, and I am more worried at this time about feeling for the truth. I know you will tell me what to do." Another case is recounted by Raymond Franz in the following way. In another typical letter, an elder wrote, saying that he had a problem he wanted to get straightened out in his mind and heart, and that to do this he felt it's best to contact the mother for advice. In those days, it was customary to refer to the organization as the mother. He then goes on to say, The problem dealt with his marital sex life, and he said that he and his wife were confused as to where to draw the line in the act of foreplay before the actual act of sex. He assured the society that he and his wife would follow any advice you give us to the letter. It's sad to see how these people place their marital happiness in the hands of the governing body. What Raymond Franz relates next clearly illustrates how many people felt. A man in a Midwestern state who confessed to an infringement of the governing body's decision as regards his marital relations with his wife was told by the elders that they were writing about this to the society. He also wrote an accompanying letter. 8 weeks passed, and finally he wrote again to Brooklyn, saying that the waiting, anxiety, and anticipation is almost more than I can bear. He said that he had been removed from all congregational assignments, including offering prayer at the meetings, and that, almost weekly, I am losing something that I have worked and prayed for 30 years. He pleaded for an early answer, saying I do need some mental relief as to how I stand with Jehovah's organization. But there were more people affected. The Watchtower's instructions were clear that, according to them, the only legitimate way to satisfy erotic desires was through the use of the sexual organs. The problem was that some male Jehovah's Witnesses wrote to the society in desperation because they had lost sexual function due to surgery or an accident. These men satisfied their wives' desires through intimate caresses, but according to the Watchtower, this violated God's laws. It was after 5 years that the subject resurfaced on the governing body's agenda, and that absurd policy was finally reversed. The change appeared in the English edition of the February 15, 1978 issue of the Watchtower. A careful further weighing of this matter, however, convinces us that, in view of the absence of clear scriptural instruction, these are matters for which the married couple themselves must bear the responsibility before God, and that these marital intimacies do not come within the province of the congregational elders to attempt to control nor to take disfellowshipping action with such matters as the sole basis. Of course, if any person chooses to approach an elder for counsel, he or she may do so, and the elder can consider scriptural principles with such a one, acting as a shepherd but not attempting to, in effect, police the marital life of the one inquiring. This should not be taken as a condoning of all the various sexual practices that people engage in, for that is by no means the case. It simply expresses a keen sense of responsibility to let the Scriptures rule and to refrain from taking a dogmatic stand where the evidence does not seem to provide sufficient basis. It also expresses confidence in the desire of Jehovah's people as a whole to do all things as unto Him and to reflect His splendid qualities in all their affairs. It expresses a willingness to leave the judgment of such intimate marital matters in the hands of Jehovah God and His Son, who have the wisdom and knowledge of all circumstances necessary to render the right decisions. Thus, they put an end to 5 years of anxiety for many married couples. It's interesting that, when reversing their decision, the Watchtower admitted, in their own words, the absence of clear scriptural instruction, and then, ironically and cynically, added that with this change they were, as they put it, making a change that expresses a keen sense of responsibility to let the Scriptures rule. And it's especially interesting because, as Raymond Franz lets us know, the original decision that started that whole mess was made after only 2 hours of discussion, with no one having time to pray or to examine the Scriptures in depth. Any apology for the marriages destroyed, the lives damaged? Allow me to laugh. Obviously, it never came. The lesson? Don't let these men guide your life. They are utterly irresponsible. Let me ask you something. Do you want this content to reach more and more people who need it? It's really simple, and it doesn't cost you a thing. Just hit subscribe, turn on a notification bell, leave a like, and share this video with anyone you think it could help. Thank you for being part of this project. See you soon.